Coming up on today's episode of Gloucester County's podcast.
We amended the solar ordinance 4 times since we adopted the first one.
Oh, man.
So it went from being a by right to a conditional use permit in only 2 districts with a maximum of 2% of that district can be solar. The General Assembly this year, as of July 1st, we have to allow them in all non-residential districts.
Really?
That's General Assembly mandated that. So we have to revisit our ordinance. We currently allow them in SC1. We talked to the Planning Commission. They directed us, let's take it out of SC1, only allow it in the districts that the General Assembly says we have to allow it.
Welcome to the Current Conversations podcast, a production of the Community Engagement and Public Information Department. I'm Savannah Hugdahl. I'm your host today. We are going to be talking about some hot button issues that I've been noticing people are talking a lot about online. Some things in local government are clear, and it's easy to understand. Your local government is responsible for animal control, and they take care of animals, and that's what they do. When it comes to a topic like zoning, planning and zoning, that's a little bit more nebulous, and it's not something people understand unless they go seek out what that means and what it entails. So I'm here with Anne Ducey-Ortiz. You want to introduce yourself, Anne?
Hi, I'm Anne Ducey-Ortiz. I'm the Director of Planning, Zoning, and Environmental Programs. I've been with the county for 26 years. I started out as a planner, and then as people left, I inherited more and more departments. So I'm pretty familiar with a lot of things in Gloucester, and I kind of came here right after the 1998 comp plan. Well, the 1998 zoning was adopted.
So I'm going to go into this assuming that somebody hasn't heard anything about it, and we need to start from the basics. Tell me what does zoning mean in a community?
So zoning, and actually, I'm going to sound like a bit of a nerd, but I didn't even print this out. I actually went to school for environmental, and so I kind of had to learn about zoning and study to become a certified planner. But zoning is actually based on the Constitution, and it's actually part of the police power. So similar to what a police officer does, it's for the health, safety, and welfare. And it actually started in like 1918 with the tenements in New York City. Localities started passing legislation because people were getting sick because they lived in horrible conditions. So that's how it all started. But then there's a lot of history. It was actually through various challenges to codes and everything was determined to be a legal enforcement of the police power. And because it's based on that, we have to comply a lot with the law. And so everything we do has to meet health, safety, and welfare. We can't just make up rules to tell people what to do and not do. But basically, our county and almost all localities, like there's a couple localities in Virginia that don't have zoning. But because we are Chesapeake Bay Preservation County, we actually have to have zoning based on that law. But we have to follow basically. There's 3 things through the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, that you can only get powers that are not delegated by the federal government. All our enabling legislation comes from the state. The Virginia government gives us the power to do zoning. We also have to follow due process. So every time something changes with the zoning, there's public hearings, notification, that's all required. And then procedural due process where we have to follow. If you don't follow the rules, whatever you did gets taken away. So when we do zoning, it's very legislative and legal. Everything we do gets reviewed by our county attorney. But essentially, the county is divided into districts called zoning districts. I mentioned in 1998, they redid the entire county and added a bunch of districts. When they adopted zoning, which was adopted only in 1984, they had single family, business, and rural for the districts. Now we have about 14 different districts. So there's our 2 agricultural district, which is RC1 and RC2. So that's primarily in the north end of the county. Mm-hmm. And then like over in Nagzira or like some of the Guinea Marshes where there are more wetlands, those are our agricultural districts. Then our highest density residential district is our single family district. So that's like a lot of Gloucester Point, the courthouse area. And then we go to our 2-acre suburban countryside district. And that's kind of between single family, and then our least dense is our C2 Bayside Conservation, which is a residential district with 5 acres minimum lot size, and that tends to be more the wetlands area, kind of Ware Neck is all C2.
So if I'm summarizing what I think I'm hearing, you're saying that these are rules put in place The state government gives the authority to communities to make these rules. They're for health, welfare, and safety. And they say what kind of activities can go on in a certain area of, say, Gloucester County.
Right. We regulate uses and then height, bulk, and area.
Okay.
So setbacks.
So who makes these rules? How does it come to be?
So it, again, because of the procedural due process, it's a very public process. But ultimately, the Board of Supervisors adopts the rules. So anytime we change the rules, it's a public hearing, and the board makes the final decision. The Planning Commission, again, is mandated by state code that every locality that has zoning has to have a Planning Commission. And they make recommendations related to land use. So for anything in the zoning ordinance or subdivision ordinance, the Planning Commission makes the recommendations and advises the board, but the board makes the ultimate decision. And that is because the board has so many things to consider, from budgeting, utilities. So the Planning Commission can focus on land use, and they, again, they're a public body. We always have a public comment period, and then they hold their public hearing, and based on what they hear from the public is how they make their recommendations. So things that go through land use tend to be scrutinized more because you have two public hearings, two opportunities for the public to give their input, but ultimately it's the Board of Supervisors. We recently updated our zoning ordinance. It was a 6-year process. We did have quite a bit of public engagement, not as much as, we never have as much as we want, but we did hear from the public, and the Planning Commission reviewed every chapter that we have now. We're actually constantly tweaking it. We have a bunch more every time you adopt something and then you start using it, and then you realize, oh, we didn't think about this, or oh, we put that in there, but this, that's not really
practically.
Yeah. So it's all online, available to the public, and our GIS map. You can click on a parcel and see what the zoning is. But we're always happy to answer questions. If people have a question about anything that's going on, give us a call, shoot us an email.
Yeah. I know that it has to be frustrating for you guys to seek all of this public engagement and say, this is really important, this affects your daily lives, please tell us what you want, and get crickets.
Yep. Or get comments that people misunderstand what the application is. But again, always happy to talk to people on the phone because, as you indicated earlier, zoning is not simple.
No.
And there's a lot of nuances. So, for example, I talked about we can regulate height, bulk, and area. When it comes to aesthetics, we're very limited because it has to have a public purpose. So typically we can regulate aesthetics when it has to do with historic districts. So we do have a designated historic downtown. So the Code of Virginia, we are allowed to regulate aesthetics in areas that we've designated as historic, or like a tourism corridor, like on the way to a historic district.
But I think this kind of gets into the issue I wanted to talk about today, which is, can people do anything they want with their property? And what are the limits that governments can set? Because we have, for example, a lot of people online who are very interested in what's happening with solar farms and are very interested in is this new business going to be another gas station? So can you talk to me about what are the pertinent rules when somebody buys a piece of property and says, I'm going to put up a 7-Eleven? What goes into that?
Every zoning district has a list of permitted uses. They are permitted by right, meaning it's just an administrative review. You meet the standards and you get approval. Typically, something like a 7-Eleven would require a site plan that gets reviewed by VDOT, the health department, utilities, everyone reviews it to make sure that they meet all the laws, not just land use. So gas stations or convenience stores are permitted only in our B1 district, which is our general business district. And that's mostly along 17, not all along 17, but mostly along 17. Our B2 is our village business district. That does not allow gas stations. So, that's our village area where we want to kind of be more walkable, less traffic orientated. If you're in a residential district, you're very limited in what type of commercial uses you can do. We do allow home occupations, which we've actually extended what you can do in a residential district by a certain amount with the new zoning ordinance update. But, if you have customer traffic or certain standards, that would require a public hearing. So you can't just do anything you want on your property. We do have minimum setbacks depending on what zoning district. So for a single family house in a single family district, it's a 15-foot side yard. I always forget 30 or 35-foot front or rear. And then your sheds are 5 feet off the side or rear. If it's an accessory dwelling unit, it's 10 feet off. So depending on the use, and again, all that was decided, discussion with the Planning Commission, and then they made the recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. So like the 5-acre zoning district, you have a 100-foot setback from the rear, 50 foot from the side, 75 foot from the front. So that kind of gives that rural sense.
Because those people who were involved with the planning said, we don't want to be wall to wall, one property, wall, 2 inches, next wall.
Correct.
And they told you that they didn't want that.
Yeah. Now, we do have very limited multifamily districts, and then we also have something called a planned unit development, a PUD, and that is kind of create your own district. So that's what, the property across from Lowe's that's been on the books since 2007, that's a PUD. And so those homes will be closer together. They went through the public hearing process. They're doing townhouses and tiny lots and then lots of open space. And we have a new application in, actually, not sure when it's going to go to public hearing, but right south of TJ Maxx, they want to do about 400 units. They will also be small lots, and if it gets approved, the Planning Commission recommended denial. They modified their proffers. So proffers are things that a developer can offer that's above and beyond what's required by zoning. And so they did proffer money to help improve our water system, money for the fire department, money for the school district, and a lot of open space as part of that development. But those all will be, if it gets adopted, very small houses kind of close to each other. But again, that's a new development. If someone chooses to live in that environment, they would be choosing that. So.
Okay, so with the 7-Eleven, a lot of people I've seen ask, why didn't we bring in a different business? Can you speak to that?
Yes, so we don't bring in business, pretty much now our economic development department, which consists of one person, she does market properties. This is the old Rite Aid. When that went out of business, she usually reaches out to the property owners to see if they want that department to market their property, and they never got back to her. So that hasn't been marketed, but that's private property, just like you have your house. We can't tell you who to sell your house to, or, as long as you meet zoning, you can put what you want on that property. So that's zoned business, B1, which allows gas stations. One of the bigger issues with it, which is somewhat what I got into the aesthetics, is with our older comp plan. So since that time, we've done a new comp plan. So there was a comp plan that was adopted in 1998, and then I think it was updated like 1999 or something like that. But it was before I got here. So the comp plan that I used when I first got here, that had a whole section on development standards. And the county at that time really wanted to improve the look of 17. And so there was a lot of recommendations for landscaping, design guidelines. And that goes back to 17 being the corridor to our historic courthouse. And so they used that section of state code to say that 17 is a corridor, we're going to do the highway corridor overlay district. And they also, in the comp plan, they talked about wanting to try to create more jobs. So they zoned a bunch of things B3, which was office business district, hoping that if we put a bunch of offices here, that would create jobs. Ever since I came to the county, so I started in 2000, every B3 property was requested to be rezoned to B1 for retail, because we are a service economy. We actually got rid of the B3 zoning because
people weren't using it that way.
And so this was zone B3, and they wanted to put a drugstore there. At the time, it was Eckerd Drugstores. And they voluntarily proffered that it would look like, here's an architectural drawing of it.
It'll be brick, and
it'll be brick. And then they proffered the layout, so the drive-through, where the entrances were. So they proffered that. And so that is above and beyond any of our requirements. Like I said, we actually got rid of Highway Corridor Overlay District. Now we have Highway Corridor Development District. They got rid of the landscaping requirements. They got rid of a lot of things, although you still, like, mechanical equipment can't go on top. Like, there's certain minimum standards that we have. But essentially, we don't have any architectural standards other than you can't put up a metal building within view of the right of way. You can put it up if you can't see it from the highway. So in 2003, when they came in to rezone it to B1, they proffered the look of the building and the layout of the building. And then they also proffered an archaeological study because of the Battle of the Hook. But so they did that, didn't find any revolutionary relics or anything. But so this rezoning now so the voluntary proffer becomes part of the zoning. And in order to not do that, you have to go back through the rezoning process. So an application came in, and they want to put up a 7-Eleven, but if they wanted to put up a Texas Roadhouse, or if they wanted to put up a Chick-fil-A, same thing, you'd have to get rid of those proffers. Like, unless you wanted to use that building the way it looks with the drive-through that it has now, if you want to do anything else there, you'd have to get rid of those proffers.
So you have to rezone.
Right. And so that's what they're doing. They do want to put up a 7-Eleven. We actually just got an email today saying that from the lawyer that represents them that this 7-Eleven will replace the 7-Elevens that are down there, that they're outdated. This is the first time anyone said that actually, but I know one of the concerns is, do we need another gas station? Do we need another 7-Eleven? We have no control over that. That's capitalism. That's if you want to put up another 7-Eleven, you think you're going to do, if it's going to work, that's on you.
Yeah.
But we did get an email today that the idea is to consolidate those other 2 7-Elevens that are already at the point and just have it at this one 7-Eleven newer. That's new news that I literally just got today.
But it's kind of like John Doe buys a property in the business district and he goes to set up his business, which it is zoned to be, and we let him because that's what we said the zone was. We can't say, oh, I wish you were a steakhouse, because John Doe doesn't care what we want him to be.
Correct.
He bought the private property and he's an American and he's following the rules, and that's how it goes. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. It doesn't matter if he's American either, if he owns the property. So it's his property. But yes, especially in you have to meet all the requirements. So like you have to get your septic or there to connect to public water and sewer. You have to meet your parking requirements. There are signage requirements or limitations. But if you meet all the requirements, you get to do what you want to do. Now, if you don't, if you can't provide parking or, there's not capacity for you to connect to water and sewer or whatever, you might not be able to do what you want on your property. But, in general, if you meet all the requirements, you get to do it. So the list of permitted uses in every district, with our planning commission, with the update, we went through every zoning district, here are the lists, and we would say whether, they would recommend by right, by conditional use permit, or by special exception. So a special exception is like something smaller that might go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, like a kennel in a residential district. That would go, and you would have to kind of say how you're going to minimize the impacts to your neighbors. A CUP would be something like a solar facility or sand mining. So some of the bigger uses that we have in the county, and that in some places they might be perfect, and in that same zoning district it might be terrible for it. And when we do that, we look at all the traffic, the noise impacts, everything that might affect the adjoining properties, and even we look at the fiscal impacts as well too. So that those get more scrutiny than something that's a by right use that just basically you meet these requirements, you get to do what you want.
Let's talk about solar farms then, because I imagine part of being in zoning is seeing new types of land uses come about and having to decide what the rules are. So solar farms, I guess they would have been a thing in 99, but they weren't as big of a thing.
So when we got our first solar inquiry, our ordinance didn't address solar. And our ordinance does say, the zoning ordinance, which is pretty standard in most zoning ordinance, if it's a use not listed, it's not permitted. There's some board members that want to do the opposite, say if it's not listed, it's permitted. But solar is a great example of, we got an inquiry and I was like, wow, it's not in our ordinance. So we had to adopt an ordinance for that. And at the time, we did a lot of research. We used a model ordinance, and the Planning Commission at the time didn't really think it was a big deal. The Planning Commission recommended it to be a conditional use permit in most districts, actually. And then when it went to the board changed it to be allowed by right in RC1. So the one up in the north end of the county came through and actually got preliminary approval, and so they were grandfathered in as a by right use. The one, like 900 acres at the north end of the county. More and more people started to hate solar near them. We had another application. So the board we amended the solar ordinance 4 times since we adopted the first one.
Oh, man.
So it went from being a by right to a conditional use permit in only 2 districts with a maximum of 2% of that district can be solar. The General Assembly just this year, as of July 1st, we have to allow them in all non-residential districts.
Really?
That's General Assembly mandated that. So we have to revisit our ordinance. We currently allow them in SC1, which is a large majority of our county. It's the orange part of our zoning map. We talked to the Planning Commission. They directed us, let's take it out of SC1, only allow it in the districts that the General Assembly says we have to allow it. I don't think we can put a cap on it, but we are going to check into that if we can put a cap on it.
To see if you can say 2%, not more, of those districts.
Right. So that we are a Dillon rule state, meaning we can only do what the state code allows us to do. And so the state code just recently changed the rules related to manufactured homes. So now we have to allow manufactured homes in all districts where we allow single-family homes. And we used to only allow them by right to replace an existing one in a residential district and by right in our ag districts. So, but if you do put a manufactured home in a residential district, you have to convert it to real property. So the General Assembly mandated how we regulate manufactured homes. And that's all, I guess, for the affordability, to make things more affordable. But one thing, this is my personal opinion, but the General Assembly this year, they're doing one size fits all, and every county is different, and we maybe have an affordability issue, but our affordability issue is a little different than Loudoun County.
Yeah.
Or, so, and we have to deal with traffic, school kids, all these other things that come with homes, so when we did zoning and when we're currently getting ready to do our comprehensive plan, a lot of the growth that we anticipate, we have to also plan for infrastructure improvements. So if you're going to get this much growth,
you have to plan to move the utilities have to connect to these places.
Or the roads have to be improved to fix it. Or we might have to build another school.
Have to have capacity for this many kids.
Yeah. So we are getting ready to do our comp plan. As I think we did a podcast on that too.
I did want to talk about the comp plan. I wanted you to talk about if someone is hearing this and they're passionate about what the future of Gloucester looks like and what people can do where, and they want to have a say in what Gloucester looks like in 20 years, what can they do?
We're just gearing up right now. So we've been meeting with consultants. We're very fortunate where the board gave us money to actually hire people to help us with this because, we've done it in-house the last time we did the whole thing in-house. And we have a pretty limited staff and trying to get that public engagement and, have the time and effort. Plus, we also thought it'd be nice to have a third party. Again, I've been here 26 years. I have my ideas what Gloucester should look like. And, we all working here, we wanted it to be what the people want. So we actually have a website. We're going to be sending out a postcard that has a QR code. You can go on our website, and hopefully we're going to be keeping that up with all the engagement opportunities. If you're interested in being on a focus group, we're actually going to have 6 focus groups dealing with different topics from the environment to transportation, economic development, housing, so that those would be more specific. You're just dealing with a certain number of people that kind of get their ideas and thoughts. But then we'll also be doing surveys. We actually have a survey that is open. We had done one a while ago, so we're just going to keep collecting information for people that if they want to keep doing the survey. But then once we hire these consultants, they're going to help us with a broad outreach of community engagement so that, they'll be coming doing town halls, more surveys. Hopefully, again, hiring a consultant that will, there might be different things that they come up with for public engagement, that would really, one thing they talk about, and we meet people where they are, so we can maybe go to the churches, maybe go to the Rotary, just get as much public outreach as we can. But so if people are interested, I just look for the postcard that's coming in the mail. And then our website is almost live. I want to say that it's so close to being live. And that's what we're hoping to have that website. And there's a way you can sign up for our news group. It's right on the Planning and Zoning front page. Sign up for our news group. So that will give you information as it comes out. So we're pretty excited. We haven't hired the consultant yet, but hopefully within the next month, it will really gear up. So
yeah, I think the more voices we have involved, the more likely we are to find compromises between differing opinions that help all parties be pretty happy with how their community turns out.
And it really is important. We have several new board members, and Carol Rizzio, who's the assistant director, and she's kind of leading up the comp plan effort. When she kind of updated them on what we were doing, one board member's like, that's great. I just want to hear what the public wants, and it's true. Every application we review, people do have different ideas. And if we can have a clear vision of this is what the county wants, that we can move then towards that. And whether it's, one of the things is, well, what capacity? I want bike trails everywhere. They're very, very expensive. And we don't maintain our own roads. So we have to rely on VDOT. And it's very competitive. And so, a mile of a sidewalk is, millions of dollars. So how realistic is that? What can we realistically work towards? So I think, it's the same with our water and sewer. What capacity do we have? How much growth can we really deal with? 17 is our only route through the county, so how much growth do we really want on 17 without widening the road again, So there's a lot to consider as part of our comp plan.
When we're talking about new uses that haven't been listed and they're automatically you need to ask, you can't just do it. One of the things that comes to mind is battery facilities. Some people talk about, these AI facilities. What do you think is in the future for Gloucester's zoning pertaining to that?
So the General Assembly has also done some stuff with battery. So if you have an existing solar facility, which we have 3 of them that would apply, that has a conditional use permit, so the one up in the north end of the county does not apply, we have to allow battery storage by right. So the General Assembly has decided that for us. Otherwise, it's a conditional use permit. So if someone wants to put a new battery storage, the other thing you're thinking of is a data center. That's a big, big issue in Virginia. We're the largest area for data centers. Loudoun, well, not Loudoun, Northern Virginia in general really encourage them. And they are a great way to make money for your county. And if you recall, our previous county administrator had explored, do we want to do this up? The only place right now where the transmission line would facilitate a data center is up at the north end of the county, the power line that goes through there, which is where the solar facility is connecting, and that poor section of the county, they've had that, they have the landfill, so we did a community meeting up there, and pretty much they said, no, we do not want this at north end of the county. So currently we have data center in our ordinance. It's only permitted in an industrial district by conditional use permit. We have very little industrial zoning. A little bit in the business park, some out in Crab Thicket, but hardly any area zoned. So they would have to rezone and get a conditional use permit to have a data center come into the county.
So they'd have to come before both boards before anything could happen in terms of a data center.
Correct.
And thank you so much for explaining all this. Your job sounds really hard, and I'm so glad you have the experience to do it. Thanks for making this plain, and I look forward to getting that postcard in the mail.
Yep, it's help designed by our community engagement department. So we appreciate you guys so much. And again, we are always here to answer questions. We love to explain things. We don't always agree with zoning either. Again, we do our best to inform the decision makers, and they make the decisions. And I will say they listen to the public. They do listen to the public. And so if you don't like something, and a lot of people have written in, and but definitely be engaged, because our board and our planning commission listen to the public.